Well, I have to start this video by making a heartfelt apology to anybody that watched the last video. I apologize that the world is not necessarily easy. That is completely and utterly my fault. I don't know what people want out of me sometimes. I sit there and I look at the YouTube comments and I'm like, I just don't understand. I hope you're trolling. I hope you're trolling because it's worse. It's worse if you're not trolling, if this is what you actually believe. So I was talking about my dieting. My dieting, I'm now down to 185 pounds. I've lost like 33 pounds since May. And I talked about using this extremely complicated diet. It's called eating less and exercising more. So anyways, I talk about it in these videos and other things on social media because I actually do find it motivates other folks. I've been surprised about this. People are like, wow, right? Seeing you being able to lose the weight by eating less and exercising more, I realize that even I could eat less and exercise more. And other folks out there, have lost weight and got into shape too. But it's funny. It's funny. I get this from people. And they're like, Eli, it's not that easy, Eli. And I always find this just to be a weird response. Like, okay. I'm not saying everything in the world is easy. I'm not saying eating less and exercising more is actually easy. It's simple. It's simple as shit. I don't have some kind of blood glucose monitor. I'm not blowing into some $300 contraption. I'm just eating less and exercising more. Simple doesn't necessarily mean easy. But the weird thing is I get this pushback from people like, Eli, it's not that easy. So yeah, okay. Does everything in life have to be easy? If it's not easy for you, do you completely and utterly refuse to do it? I don't know. It's also one of those kind of weird insults. It's like the insult. I found this to be an insult. It's like 20 some odd years ago. Again, I was traveling around the world. I was doing all kinds of cool stuff. And then, yeah, somebody shot back to me. He's like, well, Eli. Because I was talking about, again, like I flew off to India, right? Getting to India. Once I got to India, it was $2,600 for 4 months. And I hiked the Himalayas and I had all kinds of wacky stuff. And I was talking about how simple it was. Again, it was at that time it was about $1,000 for airfare, not $1,000 for vaccines. You need a lot of vaccines, all the vaccines before you go to India. Anyways, so I don't know, it cost me like $5,000 total to go 5 months or for 4 months for India. And again, most of that was actually vaccines and travel. So if you wanted to expand out, right? So it was like $400 a month once you're there. Anyways, or whatever. Anyways, I was talking about how relatively simple it was to like travel around the world and do these things. Again, even somebody that was delivering pizzas at the time could afford to do these kind of life-changing adventures or whatever. And that's why I had somebody I knew, I cared about. They're like, Eli, you got to understand, it's not as easy for everybody as it is for you. And I was like, what the fuck is it? What? No, you just do it. I'm not saying it's easy. No, it's scary as shit. Hopping on an airplane, flying halfway around the world with zero plan. Literally, I landed in Mumbai, didn't fucking know what I was gonna do next. There was a little French guy, fucking suction cut my ass too, because I didn't know what to do next. I just landed in Mumbai. I was like, okay, well, we're here for 4 months. Now what? And so he knew a guest house to go to. So I just suctioned onto him and went to that guest house. Um, but yeah, it's not easy. It's scary. It's hard. It's difficult. The rest of it. But does everything in life have to be easy? I don't know. I'm sorry. Life's hard. It's all my fault. Darn it, if there wasn't Eli the computer guy in this world, life would be so easy. But Eli the computer guy is the one that makes life, existence, hard. Anyways, so yes, I've lost weight. I've done things by doing those things. Is it easy? Fuck no. But what the hell are we talking about here? Anyways, again, if you don't know, my pride and joy is Silicon Dojo, silicondojo.com. We have a class coming up tomorrow, how to found a tech business. Also not easy. Relatively simple, not easy. We have other classes, old classes that are here. We have the self-study program. I'm actually working on right now on finishing the bottle self-study program. The last class is how to deploy bottle. Ugh, I hate this class. Anyways, I'm working on that right now. And then we have a coach here. 30-minute free sessions with me if you want to talk over Zoom to talk about whatever going on in your career. Python issues, CSS issues. Can we talk about something technical? Azure versus AWS. That's all I want in life. I want one conversation where it's Azure versus AWS. But anyways, probably won't be that. So that's what I do. The thing that we will talk about today, though, is Trump. Trump. Because I think this is kind of interesting, again, for the technology world, and again, the whole macro forces affecting in your life. And so one of the big things here is Trump's return to work policy could impact millions of federal workers, and it isn't going to impact the shit out of you. So we've had remote work, right? So remote work is this fancy new concept we've had since COVID. It did not exist at all before COVID, right? And so now everybody believes in remote work. Why do they believe in remote work? Because everybody else believes in remote work. I was talking with a buddy of mine in the technology world about this yet last night. And what I find really funny is if you go back about 10 years ago, everybody was talking about collisions. Does anybody else remember collisions? Does anybody else remember when nobody would shut the fuck up about collisions? Hey, the reason that you have 5 coders shoved, doing work at one picnic table is so that you can have more collisions, right? That was the big thing. Not that long ago. Collisions is the most important thing because Steve Jobs said so. Because remember, in the tech world, we're not really innovators. We're not really cutting edge. We just follow everybody else. Steve Jobs said collisions were the most important thing. Ergo, collisions are the most important thing, right? Anyways, so I was talking about this last night, and it is kind of funny because that was the thing. Like offices had to go away because open workspaces allowed for more collisions. Figuring out where to position bathrooms in a building was important so there could be more collisions. The idea was that everybody would cross-pollinate. And nobody would shut up about this. And as I talked about at the time, when I was doing videos at the time, I didn't quite understand this because when the hell did you do your work? Again, you'll notice I have a one kind of track in this whole being a technology professional world is like, yeah, but how do you ship product? How do you just sit there and do work? When I sit down, like right now, right? I am sitting down. Where is this damn thing? Right? And I'm like literally creating the documentation for this bottle class. And again, we have my SSH open up onto my DigitalOcean thing, and I'm just working. And so that's what I don't understand. I understand the point of some collisions, always understood the point of some collisions, but this hyper focus on colliding all the time. My big question back then was, yeah, but when do you actually do the work? Eli, you don't understand. Anyway, so we had collisions. So that was, and that's why we had open office spaces, and that's why all this kind of stuff was changing. And then what's interesting now is, again, we have COVID, and now everybody's going to remote work. The hyper focus is on remote work. This is what you have to do. Obviously, everybody knows that people being spread all across the world, doing coding in their underoos, that's the best way to do things. And again, I really want you to think about this and how insane our industry is for a second. Less than 10 years ago, the idea was you had to have like 10 coders shoved onto one picnic table because that was the most effective way to develop products. And now you need your employees spread all over the world because that's the most effective way to develop products. You're like, what? Anyways, and it's interesting to see how these types of things change and move on. And it's important. One of the reasons I talk about this, again, having done tech since 1996 at this point, is I want you to understand that this is just simply the thought process and how things change and how things move. This idea that this is the proper way to do anything is horse crap. Again, with telecommuting. Do you remember telecommuting? There's a thing called telecommuting. We've had telecommuting since ISDN lines. So there's something called an ISDN line. It was twice the speed of a 56K line, maybe 3 times the speed of a 56K line. Anyways, um, once ISDN lines came out, we could have telecommuting. And so telecommuting has been around, again, since at least 2000, widespread since 2000. When I worked in one of the enterprise companies, I remember the day help desk got hammered because Comcast, for cable internet, decided to basically kill VPN pass through for residential clients. So basically, you had all of these home users using VPN to access the work network. All of a sudden, Comcast, as a company, shuts off a VPN pass through, and then all of a sudden, help desk gets hammered to high hell. And there's nothing quite like your tech department getting hammered to high hell when there's not a damn thing you can do about it because it's Comcast that did the issue. But I want you to think about that. That was like 2001 era when that happened. That was a disaster for our particular company. And so we've had telecommuting for years. Again, I remember I went to Interop New York in maybe 2010, 2011 timeframe. And one of the interesting things there is IBM was talking about moving to telecommuting. And the idea was they spent so much money on facilities. Again, when you think about the cost of a desk and then heating a desk and cooling a desk and having people vacuum around a desk and the whole nine yards, IBM was talking about going to basically like a 100% telecommuting environment. 100,000 employees were going to be telecommuting the whole nine yards because telecommuting was the future. Right, until they found out there were problems with telecommuting. There's an interesting thing. Like Elon Musk likes to complain about telecommuter or remote workers being lazy. Actually, and there were studies. There was actually research done 15 years ago on those. And that actually found one of the bigger problems with telecommuters is that they burned out. So 15 years ago, before social media is what it is today, before Netflix is what it is today, and the rest of it, one of the big issues is people were getting so compartmentalized. And then what would happen is that they wouldn't know when to log off from their computers, right? If you go into an office and you have a desktop computer, you come into the office, you deal with your desktop computer for 8 hours, and then you go home. The problem is what happens when you're telecommuting. You've always got access to the computer, you've always got access to the systems. Well, I just woke up. I'm not going to start working yet, but let me check my emails to make sure I know what I'm walking into today. Oh, it's 8 o'clock at night. I have a good idea. I'll just ping somebody about it now so they know I'm thinking about it tomorrow. And then all of a sudden, you have these people that just never log off their damn computers. And actually, one of the bigger issues that you run into is burnout. That was a real thing, right? But anyways, right? And so that was the thing. So everything was going to go telecommuting, and then everything was going to go collisions, and now everything was going to go remote work. And now Trump and a whole bunch of people are trying to kill remote work, and it's all a return to office thing. And so what I want you to understand about all of this is it's just the fad. It's just the fad. Remote work is not better than return to office. Open office is not better than remote work. This is just whatever fad is currently going through your executive's mind at the time. Again, an important thing to be thinking about with your company, or if you are a decision maker, is asking yourself why you make the decisions that you make. The biggest problem that we have with most of our organizations is we do not really know why we're doing what we're doing. If you actually ask a manager to truly articulate why they have the policies that they do, most of them will not be able to. And that's why you get the claptrap of whatever the current fad is. So anyway, one of the things to be thinking about this too is I was talking to a CEO of a development company a couple of years ago. I've talked about this before, and they had great benefits. They had great benefits. Like one of the benefits they had was like unlimited vacation time. Like if you want to take vacation, you can just take vacation. And so one of the interesting things, I was talking to the CEO, and I was like, so what's the benefit of that? What's the benefit? What? How does it make your employees better to have unlimited vacation? And of course, he looked at me the way everybody looks at me, like I'm a moron. I was like, what? What? He's like, yeah. The reason that he offered unlimited vacation is because everybody else offered unlimited vacation. So literally, the reason that he offered unlimited vacation was so that he could get employees. If he did not offer unlimited vacation, he could not get employees. And I want that to be in the back of your mind a little bit. Again, when you think about what's been going on with the tech industry over the past decade or so, with 1% interest rates, again, this insane mentality where they've just been hiring, hiring, and hiring, and hiring, they were offering benefits, not because they could articulate an actual benefit to the corporation for why these benefits made their employees better. They offered these benefits because that was the only way to get employees. Employees were in such high demand that the only way you get them is to do all this idiocy, right? And so I think that's interesting. Again, with the COVID world and the whole remote work world, we had the remote work world really come into the forefront again with COVID and also the boost in tech spending. All of these tech companies brought on tens of thousands of new employees with the idea for some reason that they would need, right? So you already had a major hiring bubble. You just dramatically increased the hiring bubble. And to get people in the door, you offered remote work. Now the issues we've gone a couple years down the road. Remote work doesn't work out the way people think it does. Again, don't get me wrong. Remote work is great for senior employees. If you are a senior employee, remote work is most likely fine. Mid-level employees, remote work is most of the time fine. You probably need a little bit of a hybrid there, right? But new employees, it sucks. It's just dog shit. It's just dog shit. If you are a new employee and you're offered remote work, really think about your options because it's a dog shit solution for you. And the reason is because you're not around the other people. Collisions are most important for noobs. And that's probably why it was a big thing in vogue about 10 years ago when they were bringing so many people in, right? Because when you're around other people, you see how the business functions. You get to understand why decisions are made. You get to understand who is in what position and why that matters. You really get to understand what the org charts are. You really get to understand what your infrastructure looks like. It's a bonding experience, right? You're not just there for a paycheck, but you also make friends and the rest of it. And it's incredibly important for noobs. The issue is again, we get with those senior and mid-level people. The senior people don't need to come into the office in order to do their job, and the mid-level people generally don't need to come into the office to do their job, but the noobs do. But the value for the noobs is to be around the mid-level and senior level employees. And so the issue then becomes is you've got to drag the senior level and mid-level employees into the office, not for their particular benefit, but so they can mentor and inspire and smack the knuckles of the new folks that are coming in so that you can train that next generation of tech employees and people for your organization. Again, I think this is a big thing that's going to start to become more and more of an issue again in this post-COVID world where you had organizations that were functioning in in-person or hybrid environments and people knew each other and it was all right. Then they go to this remote work environment. You've built up an institutional culture where people know what's going on and having relationships in the whole 9 yards. That will last for a period of time before you really start to see the cracks in the foundations of that structure. But the issue is as you go farther and farther and farther down, you hire more and more and more new people, you're going to start to have more institutional cracks where it's just people don't know what's going on. Again, it is harder to manage people. It is harder to mentor people. It's harder to do all of these things. So anyways, and so one of the things that we're now seeing is that a lot of these tech companies are moving more and more to bring people back into the office by hook or by crook. Some of it is for things like efficiency and that type of thing. Some of that is to basically eliminate employees. And we're seeing more and more of this. Again, Elon Musk started this with Twitter, a couple of years ago at this point. Then Mark Zuckerberg, hot on the heels of that did it. Amazon's been firing people. Google's been firing people. Everybody's been just laying people off. And so that's what becomes interesting now with Trump. And so basically Trump is now putting this at a federal level of Trump's return to work policy could impact 1 million federal employees. And so basically Trump is coming in now and saying the federal government doesn't really want to have the remote workers. Trump ended the remote work option. Roughly half of the federal workforce is currently remote. Remote work has helped underserved populations. President Donald Trump's executive order putting an end to remote work for federal workers is poised to change the job setup for more than 1 million employees. Half of the federal workforce had been allowed to work remotely as part of a larger culture shift that occurred during the pandemic. Under new policies, officials estimate that more than 1 million federal workers could now be impacted. Few agencies have a high volume of employees who can work remotely. Government data showed the EPA nearly 98% of 16,000 employees are telework eligible, with 15% working remotely. The Washington Post reported in the Department of Veterans Affairs, 26% of 485,000 employees are eligible, with 8% working remotely. However, the Trump administration said it's looking to fill large federal facilities like the Department of Energy, where fewer than 1% of the office space are being used, according to the Public Building Reform Board. A 2023 GAO report said that 70% of the 24 federal agencies are using as little as 9% of federal buildings and only as much as 49% of their buildings' capacity. In addition to bringing workers back to the empty desk, Trump says he wants to sell unused federal buildings. So basically, the idea is you have a lot of these federal employees that have been told for a long time now, again up to 98% in some agencies, that they are telework eligible, even if only 15 or 8% are actually doing it. And now Trump is basically going to be saying everybody needs to come back to the office. On top of that, he now is saying that he will buy out, or the federal government are going to buy out federal employees if they don't want to come back. So basically, he's saying, again, what we're seeing in the rest of the corporate world, if you don't want to return to office, you too can quit. We'll give you a paltry severance for that if you go the hell away. If we look at NPR, Trump now invites nearly all federal workers to quit now, get paid through September. The Trump administration is offering nearly all federal workers the opportunity to resign from their posts now and still retain full pay and benefits through September 30th. The notice, sent via an email blast from the OPM Tuesday afternoon, gave employees until February 6th to accept the deal. Employees wishing to resign were instructed to reply to the email from their government accounts with the word resign and hit send. Because that's the professional way to have a major chunk of your employees leave your company. The memo was not clear on whether employees who choose to resign would be expected to work between now and September 30th. It did explicitly say that they would not have to comply with return to office plans. And so basically, it looks like Trump is trying to go through and take a damn hatchet to the federal employees, which this is not good. Again, should we downsize the federal government? Yeah, probably would be a good idea. Should we do it via the way Elon Musk downsized Twitter? Probably not a great idea. But I think the more curious thing here is the idea of how this is going to impact a lot of people in the tech field. Again, a lot of your benefits have nothing to do with your value to the company or how it makes you more valuable to the company. It simply is because everybody else was doing it, right? Remote work is not because remote work is better. Remote work is because everybody else was doing remote work, because it was literally collisions right before remote work. That's how idiotic all this kind of crap is. And so as we see, again, so many of these companies, Amazon pushing it, for Google for pushing it, all these, and now we have the federal government pushing for return to office. I think we're going to see more and more of that hammer of you are going to be forced to return to office. And again, the interesting thing is, this is a capitalist system. So basically, before, when employees were in demand, when you couldn't get your hands on enough employees, you had to bend over backwards in order to get an ass in a seat. Now, as we have more and more and more layoffs, as our economy is ever more shredded, right? There's going to be a thing like, okay, you don't want to do remote work. It is going to be difficult for you to find, childcare or whatever else. But if you don't think you can get another job, right? Because that's the thing, like with all these tech companies, like when they lay off 10,000 people, it's not just that they lay off 10,000 people, but they also don't hire the next batch of 10,000 people. That's what you'll notice. Like if you actually read through this, not only are they laying off so many people, but they're rescinding job offers that have already been put out. Plus, they're slowing down the hiring. And so if you have more and more and more companies doing this all at the exact same time, it gives employees ever fewer options on what to do next. And so I'll be curious to see how this works out. Again, we're going to go back to more of a remote, a return to office environment. The office environment makes sense in a lot of ways. What I'll be curious about is places like Asheville, North Carolina. So I'm in Asheville, North Carolina. The economy here has gotten totally screwed by remote workers, right? We have so many remote workers from California, from DC, from New York on their salaries. So the price of a house based off of the salaries of Asheville people should be about $300,000. But the problem is now the locals are competing with people getting paid from New York who get paid a lot more, and so now houses are like $1 million here. Again, that's one of the things that's going on with my wife and I. We're trying to figure out what to do now. Is when we moved here, so we got a house for about $500,000. We figured to upgrade to a really nice house. Once we figured exactly where we want to live here, it would cost us like $600,000 or $700,000. That was only 4 years ago. That was 4 years ago. Now to upgrade from the house that we have now, it would be $1.5 million. And that's all because of remote workers. Right? We don't have a Facebook here. We don't have a platinum mine here. We don't have a right. This is a beer economy, right? Housing prices have essentially gone from $600,000 to $1.5 million simply because of these remote workers. And so one of the curious things to be thinking about is what's going to happen with these return to office mandates, and not just for you as an employee, but also on so many of these places that remote workers have flocked to. Again, where digital nomads have flocked to. What happens when the vacuum starts sucking them back to wherever the hell their desk is supposed to be? Um, I'll be curious. I'll be curious to see how this goes. I think this current administration is going to be a damn disaster. This is gonna be a shit show. Because I mean, it's like putting out this thing where he's saying where so the OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, just puts out an email to like 3 million federal employees and basically says if you want to resign, simply reply with the word resign, and that's just going out everybody. And the curious part is, even if people make the bad decision, like that's one of the things you have to be concerned about as a decision maker, is what happens if people make the bad decision? What happens if there isn't a job that they're expecting, but they think, okay, I don't want to work for this stupidity, so I'm going to leave. So what happens when you have valuable people that leave because they're expecting to be able to get another offer? They can't get another offer once they leave. Ha ha, those dumbasses. But now the government or the organization also doesn't have those people. Again, when you're laying off massive, or allowing just massive amounts, thousands, tens of thousands, possibly 100,000 people go all at one shot, how does that affect everything? Oh, I can't wait for this 4 years to be over. Again, AOC versus DeSantis. AOC versus DeSantis. That's what I want. I don't want this idiocy. I don't want a president who basically dumps money into people's pockets at the exact same the supply chain at the same time the supply chain is fucked up, so inflation goes through the roof. That was fucking stupid. I also don't want a president who literally sends out to like 3 million employees, if you don't want to be here, just email back, resign. That also doesn't seem like a very good idea. Can we just have policy? What's our policy? That's all I want. So, anyways, what do you think about this with Trump trying to fire, the whole concept of remote work? What do you think about this? How it keeps pivoting back and forth? Again, if you looked at this for 30 years, none of this. Again, I remember ISDN lines. I remember, wow, people can get these ISDN lines, 128 kilobits per second, and you can be working from anywhere in the world, right? You go from that to office to telecommuting to collisions to remote to back. What do you think about how all this is kind of fads? And what do you think about this for a generation? Again, what I find fascinating with this generation of tech employees is that they've basically just been in a bull market since essentially 2009, right? Again, for me, we had the major changes in electronics and computers in the 90s, and then we had the dot-com bust, and then we had the Great Recession. So even when I was young, even in my early 30s, I had already seen what this industry could be like. What I find interesting, again, the younger folks out there, that it's just been this progression for a lot of them. Again, since 2009, right? You learned JavaScript in 2009, so you can do rollover images or whatever on websites, and you just stick with that JavaScript stack for the next 15 years, and you think you are valuable. What happened again? What happens with 30 and 40-year-olds who have never had a 9-year-old girl just punch them in the nuts? Be curious to see what happens, see how this all shakes out. So, anyways, with that, I have to go back to mucking around with DigitalOcean. I think that's one of the interesting things with teaching people. Like you can deploy. It's like, oh, Eli, you're just deploying a bottle app to DigitalOcean. It's like, oh yeah, no, that's simple. Like if you told me, hey, Eli, yeah, by the end of the day or by lunch, we need to deploy this app. Oh yeah, whatever. But you think about teaching it, by teaching it, so you have to break down every step, and so you have to break it down in a way that you're not saying oops while you do it, and then you have to think about how you're going to say it, and then you actually have to do it on video. And this rather simple process becomes kind of like this tedious mess. Again, when you try to pass it on to the next generation, that's almost the perfect metaphor. That's almost the perfect metaphor for like the push and pull between remote work and working in the office or whatever, return to office policy is, again, it's that idea. So I, as a senior level person, if you tell me to deploy an app, I'll just do it, right? I may fat finger or something or whatever while I'm doing it, but again, in a couple hours it'll be done, right? But is that my value to the company, or is the value to the company not necessarily that, but that I'm also able to bring up the younger generations to get to my position? I think my job is to deploy apps. My actual value to the company is to create a culture where apps can be deployed. And those are two different things. So anyways, that's all I got to say. See y'all later.